Lewis Hamilton moving to Ferrari for the 2025 season has dropped a bombshell on the Formula 1 driver market. But one thing I wasn't expecting to see was Sebastian Vettel being linked back to the Formula 1 grid with his past rivals Mercedes. The four-time world champion moved away from the grid 2 seasons ago and hasn't raced since, and Mercedes seem to have their hearts set on their teenage prodigy Andrea Kimi Antonelli. But under the right circumstances, Vettel might just be the perfect replacement for Lewis Hamilton. Let's get into it. When I first saw the rumour that Sebastian Vettel could be coming back to the Formula 1 grid, replacing Lewis Hamilton in a Mercedes seat, I kind of brushed it off as another one of those throwaway Formula 1 stories. But after having thought about it for a little while, and all of the reaction from Toto Wolff, Sebastian Vettel himself, and Lewis Hamilton, mulling it over in my head, I feel like bringing back Vettel could be almost perfect for Mercedes in the right situation. Looking back at when the four-time world champion retired at the end of the 2022 season, he was only 35, which I know is one of the older drivers on the grid, but he's younger than his Aston Martin successor Fernando Alonso, and he was one of the better drivers on the grid last season, and he's younger than Lewis Hamilton, who he would be replacing, who is still racing at the top end of the Formula 1 grid. Plus, he always left the door open to a Formula 1 return. He never lost his love for racing, but instead fell into a bit of an internal conflict between his Formula 1 career and his interest in sustainability initiatives, as well as his desire to spend more time with his family rather than spending his time flying around the world. So back then, it felt like a perfectly good time for Sebastian Vettel's career to come to a close. His decision to retire aligned with his priorities, whilst also coming at a time where his career was in a little bit of a lull. You could argue that Sebastian Vettel's career was moving towards its end and had already started to decline when he was still at Ferrari, when he was displaced as the team leader by Charles Leclerc and then ousted by the team at the end of the 2020 season. And you could tell that being kicked out of the Ferrari team, not being able to win a championship with Ferrari in the way that Michael Schumacher did, really took its toll on Sebastian Vettel, and the move to Aston Martin, the fact that he started to fall down the pecking order in a similar vein to many drivers before him, just put an end to any hopes of Sebastian Vettel becoming a five-time world champion. And he lost a little bit of not his love for racing, but maybe a little bit of the passion that made him such a force at the beginning of his career. Now, I'm certainly not saying that he wasn't good enough to stay on the Formula 1 grid. His time at Aston Martin certainly had some ups and downs, but when Vettel found his rhythm, he was still able to put in some stunning performances. Let's not forget about drives like Baku in 2021, where he picked up a podium, or Hungary of the same year, where he was battling for a victory, until he was disqualified after the race. But back-to-back 12th place finishes in the standings for Aston Martin at that time actually put him towards the front of the pack he was running with only Valtteri Bottas, in my opinion, in 2022, arguably outdoing the German in a car that was comparable in terms of pace across the entire season. So we weren't looking at a driver that had nothing left to offer. It was his decision to leave the Formula 1 grid, even though he was still very much fast enough to warrant his space on it. However, since his retirement, we haven't really heard much from the four-time world champion, apart from a few outings in charity events and things like the Festival of Speed, where he's driven old Formula 1 machinery. He's been spending a lot of time working on projects that are promoting sustainability and actually spending time with his family, relaxing, something that you don't get to do when you're a Formula 1 driver, especially when you're a Formula 1 driver right at the top end of the sport like Sebastian Vettel was for so long. But we are starting to see Sebastian at least flirt with the motorsport world once again. He recently tested out a Porsche car with Jota in Spain, meaning we could see Seb have a run at Le Mans sometime soon. And we've seen quite a few Formula 1 drivers have a go at Le Mans 24-hour race over the years. I mean, we've even seen some quite strange names considering where they've ended up in the history of Formula 1. But Nico Hülkenberg and most recently Antonio Giovinazzi have gone on to win it. However, back to the point, seeing Sebastian Vettel taking part in these kinds of tests might just give him the chance to put himself back in that high pressure environment of being behind the wheel of a race car to see if the spark has returned. And it also gives Mercedes an opportunity to gauge his racecraft and whether he can still do a good job behind the wheel, even if he is unlikely to take part in any WEC races this year. The fact that Sebastian Vettel is now dipping his toe back into motorsport at the same time he's being interviewed on Formula 1 channels and supposedly in discussions with Toto Wolff, it just makes you wonder if he's always keeping an eye on that Mercedes situation. He would once again be following in the footsteps of his hero, Michael Schumacher, and although it was different when Michael came into the team because Mercedes were returning to the Formula One grid, he came in with the objective of working with the team to lift them up towards glory and then handing the car off to a younger driver. Well, Sebastian Vettel could end up doing basically the same thing, helping the Mercedes team by coming back in, lifting them back up towards the glory that's eluded them in this regulation cycle, and then handing the car off to a younger driver. I probably should have said earlier on in the video that I'm not saying Sebastian Vettel is the first choice for that Mercedes seat. The leading contender for the team is most certainly their 17-year-old Formula 2 prodigy, Andrea Kimi Antonelli. And the fact that Mercedes are willing to miss out on candidates with strong track records that are currently on the Formula 1 grid, like Carlos Sainz or Fernando Alonso, or even outside the box candidates like Esteban Ocon and Alex Albon, who they could just sign up right now if they wanted to. I mean, Toto Wolff even said in Suzuka, he's not worried about other contenders potentially taking deals elsewhere. And the fact that they're continuing to wait is just very telling in my opinion. I mean, Toto Wolff has been very mixed in interviews linking to that second driver seat, referring to both the next few weeks and the next few months when they've asked when a decision is likely to come. So that decision is not imminent. And I think that waiting is proof that the favourite for the seat is Andrea Kimi Antonelli, and they still need more data on the Italian before making their final decision. And that willingness to risk missing out on some of the best drivers on the Formula 1 grid right now to give Antonelli every chance to show his talents already speaks volumes of how much anticipation they have around him. And you could say that the Mercedes team can already start making decisions based on the first few Formula 2 races. However, it's been a really difficult start to the season for his Prema team, so there's not too much to go off of yet. And in fact, I think the real thing that Mercedes are going to judge Kimi on is his performances in the upcoming Formula 1 test outings in old Mercedes machinery. Antonelli is actually set to be out on track in his first Formula 1 test program this season at the Red Bull Ring in a few weeks' time, with 2 days of running in the 2021 Constructors' Championship winning Mercedes W12. And although the program designed so that Kimi can get into a Formula 1 car has been in place for a very long time, well before the announcement that Lewis Hamilton would be leaving the team, interestingly, Toto Wolff has said, what we have done is added more days, but what you'll see in the next few months has been in place whether or not he's going to sit in a Formula 1 car next year. The fact the extra dates have been added to his program later in the year now that the team knows Hamilton is leaving is a huge clue as to the team's plans for his future. Therefore, I feel like unless the unexpected happens, Kimi Antonelli is in the position where at 18 years old, he could be in one of the most desirable seats on the Formula 1 grid for the 2025 season. But the unexpected has happened in Formula 1 before. Let's say Kimi just doesn't quite hit the mark when it comes to this year's Formula 2, and those Mercedes test runs don't quite go to plan, and the team realised that the jump from FRECA to Formula 2 to Formula 1 in 3 seasons is just a little bit too much for him. I don't think it would do him any harm to have the 2025 season as the test driver for Mercedes. It gives Kimi another season if he needs it, where he can be in the background of every single race if they want him to be, and he can still learn the operational side of things while still being able to compete in Formula 2 and complete even more testing for Mercedes until the team are absolutely sure he is ready. Plus, Kimi can then come into Formula 1 to a brand new regulation cycle, so he doesn't learn one car only for the entire thing to be changed the next season, which could cause him to be a little bit unsettled going into 2026. That's where I think Sebastian Vettel is an amazing option to have if you're the Mercedes team. Given the team's desire to get Antonelli into Formula 1 at the earliest opportunity, Sebastian Vettel would understand that were he to return in 2025 at the age of 37 after 2 full seasons on the sidelines, he would only be given a short-term deal. He'd be a stopgap to Antonelli eventually taking his place. But if Seb is happy with that arrangement, I think it works wonderfully for both sides. There would be absolutely no pressure on Vettel. He could just go out for one more season and enjoy it, maybe fight for a few more podiums and help the team prepare for a new set of regulations whilst getting in some victory laps effectively and not worrying about having to hit specific targets or win the championship, just one final swan song. And from Mercedes' side of things, you're getting a driver that is the perfect stopgap and will accept being a stopgap to Kimi Antonelli Antonelli, which the likes of Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz probably wouldn't accept. It gives Kimi Antonelli the added time to keep working on his racecraft in Formula 2. And you know what? If he's the test driver, maybe just slot him into the car for a race or two in place of Sebastian Vettel. Like, imagine Kimi Antonelli coming in and having Sebastian Vettel in an advisory role to the Italian. Is there a better teacher that you could think of? Sebastian Vettel could even coach him in Italian. Mercedes could almost end up with a 3-driver system for the 2025 season, assuming they're not battling for the championship or anything. The only thing that I think could cause a stir was if Sebastian Vettel came in and absolutely trounced George Russell. That could be interesting for Mercedes to deal with, but we'd cross that bridge when we got there. I think Mercedes speaking to Sebastian Vettel and at least having a discussion around him being a possible stopgap for the 2025 season is a discussion they may as well have just in case. And if Vettel can come in for one season, we get to see the reverse of what we saw in the 2010s, with Hamilton and Vettel battling once again, but this time in the opposite colours. And Sebastian Vettel can then step aside for Kimi Antonelli to take the Mercedes seat in 2026, and Seb could then go into some kind of ambassadorial role within Mercedes, akin to Schumacher when he left the sport for the second time. But why is there so much hype around Kimi Antonelli? Well, I actually made this video here going through everything that you need to know about the Italian coming into the 2024 season. So click that link and I'll see you over there.